What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to the first event that I'm covering for E3 2016. Today it's going to be Electronic Arts. So we just got done seeing the video. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stuff I saw and what I thought of it. Let's just jump straight into it. I want to say thanks to all the patrons and all the people who've been telling everybody about the channel on Twitter. It has actually helped immensely. Thank you a lot. So jumping straight into it, the first thing that I want to talk about a little bit is basically Titanfall's single player. So they sort of showed some of the stuff about it and sort of talked about it, and I think it's something that most people who played Titanfall originally felt was missing. So Titanfall 2 is coming out. It's going to have, what they say is a full single player. We'll see how that sort of pans out. We've had issues in the past where sometimes the Battlefront games have had more or less single player depending on the title, and sometimes having a single player game really hasn't elevated that title to some unique status or unique situation, and for some people it's not even a reason for them to get it. But I like the fact that Titanfall 2 is going to have a full single player campaign. It'll be interesting to see what they do. It's also going to be interesting to see a lot of those new mechanics that they were sort of hinting at in the video. I will say this. What I saw looked good, but it wasn't at the same generational jump that I think we may see with some of the other games. And I'm not quite sure if that's just the multiplayer aspect that they were showing and that's why or what, but it looked good. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of Titanfall, so that'll be interesting to see. Now, the next thing is sports. They covered a ton of sports, and it's so really sort of sad to see a lot of journalists pandering to people on Twitter, with weird little comments and stuff like that. Leave that up to the YouTubers. Like, there has to be some weird separation of church and state there where somebody doesn't have to be a jackass, these written web publishers were all bitching and moaning about EA Sports taking so much time. The fact is, guys, there's a ton of fan of sports, and it's sort of like an American bitching about soccer. I do it all the time, but when it comes to a conference, I have to understand that just because I'm not a big fan of soccer, the world is. And so we saw a ton of stuff coming out, including managers, which that did sort of strike me as funny. But it's the same way as, we get football coaches on the side in an NFL, Madden game, and you're really excited to see those lifelike representations on the side. So there's nothing wrong with soccer doing it. Some of these managers are really, really personable, are really, really entertaining to the people who are fans of soccer. So the idea of sort of moving that forward and adding those is cool. I want to see what gameplay elements they have. Like, will they adjust the play of the characters and that kind of thing. But regardless, there was a ton of sports. There was a ton of Madden and a ton of FIFA, and I think that's great. People like those kind of titles. They really do enjoy them. Otherwise, EA wouldn't be making them. They do well for EA, and a lot of people like them. And then talking about Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda looked awesome in the little bits of gameplay they showed. Mako's back. You guys know me. I'm a fan of the Mako. When I talked about it in the Walking the Walk, I actually really enjoyed the Mako, probably because inherently the Mako's inclusion to me means more driving around and exploring. So there's sort of the combination of you get something because it means something else in the game, and that's sort of why I was excited about seeing the Mako in there. But looking at Andromeda and seeing it, the one thing that got me wasn't all of this all crazy stuff. Do you know what I really liked? I loved the ending scene when the female version of whatever we're going to call this character, Shepard, Shepard number 2, sits up and says, what did they say? We made it. Yeah, I like that. They were like, we made it. And I thought that was sort of cool. There was this poignant moment of like, this long journey was done. We made it. Well, that's actually the beginning of the journey, so that was cool. There was something about that just a little comment there right at the end. And it was a really good way of ending Mass Effect Andromeda's coverage. What do I think of it as a whole when I look at it? It looks okay. It looks basically like Mass Effect in its gameplay style. You have a little bit more of the bombastic powers going on. You saw the animation of leaping up into the air and smashing. You see some alien races that look like they might be the exact alien races we've seen before, but in more of a tribal setting, which will be interesting if that's what we saw. It was a little bit difficult sometimes for me to see because there's buffering and stuff. I would say this stream was actually not the best no matter where I went. I went to Twitch, I went to YouTube Gaming, went to Electronic Arts' own stream, and that was probably the best out of all of them. But yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda, it can go out there and it may just end up knocking our socks off. So I'm excited to see that. And also, if you noticed, the Mako basically changed its design a couple times, including what I call the Sand Mako or the Seiko. If you guys watch, there's this one time where it drives over a hill in the sand and you see these big knobby tires, and I was like, that could actually be pretty friggin' sweet depending on what you have and where you go. And then moving on to EA Originals, basically they covered Faye, which I'm assuming has to do with the musical connotation, because they did say, everybody speaks in music. That was cool, but I did notice that when I was talking to people, they're like, what is that exactly? Because I think they were expecting the spelling F-E-Y, like spirit. What you saw, 3D World, looked interesting. I'm not 100% sure it's something for everybody, but it's certainly this EA Originals idea, this new idea to sort of push out what EA's doing and not just be triple blockbusters. I do feel, though, that really what EA and any big company, it's not even a ding on EA, any big company when they do this kind of stuff is really hoping for that platformer that takes off. That's honestly how I feel. It seems like every one of these times you get Phil Spencer or Peter Moore or somebody from Sony, whoever's going to be doing Sony's announcements, come out. A lot of times when they talk about handing these originals, I'm always wondering if they're just sort of hoping the next Crash Bandicoot or the next Sonic is going to come out of these. If you get my drift there, it's like, we can, within the business, you can give out a lot of money on a bunch of duds if you only hit gold once. It's so true, especially when you consider Sonic, Mario, Crash, and multiple others, Donkey Kong, that are these major platformers. And we see this kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting. I think it looks good. And it's exciting for EA to have this Originals program, because I know a lot of people like Arnie. And then we moved to Star Wars. And there was not necessarily a lot of Star Wars shown, but there was a lot of Star Wars talked about. So they talked about Star Wars Battlefront. They talked about what sounded like Star Wars Battlefront 2, but I don't think, at least in my video with some of the buffering, I didn't ever see Star Wars Battlefront 2 actually as a motif pop up, but Jade Raymond was talking about, working on the next Star Wars Battlefront. And then you, of course, have the Amy Hennig one, where she's working on basically some kind of new Star Wars game as well. And then I don't know if that's the one Jade Raymond's involved in. And then there's one from Respawn that they're doing a Star Wars. So there's a lot of games. But what surprised me, if you watched, PSVR was shown and somebody was inside of a X-Wing and was looking around in PSVR. Now, what does that really mean? Well, PSVR in no way, shape, or form can handle the fidelity of a Star Wars Battlefront game. We already know that. That's just the way the technology works. But PSVR on the Neo might. So one thing we do know is that when something comes out on the PS4 and PS Neo, it needs to work, right? It needs to work on both. But they never have really said that you can't have a VR mode on the Neo and not on the PS4 if you still deliver the same game. So that's going to be interesting to see if, maybe you have a PSVR and, you plug in your game, you're playing your Star Wars Battlefront, and you can basically add some kind of DLC that allows you to actually be inside the cockpit and look around and use your PSVR. It'll be interesting to see, but it was there and gone again, and I think a lot of people missed it, but it was definitely showing PSVR. And of course, now with Microsoft sort of sounding like they're going to try to do something with Oculus, it'll be interesting to see how these Star Wars games sort of branch out into all these different systems. And then the last thing I want to talk about, Battlefield 1. So Battlefield 1 was shown. They were showing they said this is in-game footage, then not, and then later showed what appeared to be actual in-game footage, and it does look phenomenal. You guys know me. I'm not a huge fan of returning multiple times to the same place to see the same shit. I'm one of those type of people that's more forward, future-looking. So to me, a future Call of Duty or a future Battlefront or Battlefield is more what I'm looking for. However, seeing what they've done and seeing the way it looks, and they've sort of played around with some of what's going on, obviously, within history, and you have these, I guess, what they called mammoth vehicles or whatever, so some of these different, technological constructs. That actually looked really good. It's going to be super exciting. They're going to show more at the show, and I think that that'll be interesting for everybody involved. So, if you asked me what I would score this, I would score it probably, like if you did A, B, C, D, E. Since this isn't a game and isn't a value proposition, I don't feel a problem with that. It's probably a B, maybe a B minus. Most of the stuff was just, CGI and stuff like that. The FIFA stuff was great for FIFA fans, which is huge. So was some of the Madden stuff. But overall, I felt that there was a lot of CGI in this entire event. It was just tons of CGI. And, as we've moved forward, I think a lot of the other companies, especially Microsoft, is like, hey, this is coming out next, month or whatever. And you sort of see something. Sony, you sort of see something, even if it's a little bit farther out, right? Nintendo, right now, we're not quite sure what they're doing. But even Ubisoft, you see stuff. And, hey, it may be downgraded, but you're seeing something at least within the game engine. And it felt like Electronic Arts had sort of missed the boat this time. Like there was a lot of CGI going on. I think what they really wanted to do is say, hey, everybody, look at us. We've got Star Wars brewing, but we really don't have anything cool enough to show you. For example, I was blown away that Star Wars Battlefront, they didn't show some huge expansion to that, like a new one or something where they were like, hey, look at this. We're not just, and just blow our socks off. I was really surprised because this is the E3 event. But regardless, I'd say, yeah, B or B minus. I hope you guys continue to watch these. I'm probably going to do a live stream while it's happening for Microsoft's and Sony's. We'll see if I can get that technology working. Other than that, thanks for watching. It seems to be an exciting time. I mean, Battlefield, I know a lot of people think Battlefield 1 looks awesome and want to play that. Titanfall, hey, you know what? A lot of people like Titanfall 2. Like Titanfall 1, sorry, and Titanfall 2 looks like it's improving in all ways. So I think that there's some stuff there for the more action-packed fans. And of course, EA and sports, they've always got their shit together. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you liked the video. If you did, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. And peace out.